Hey, buddy. Welcome back. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there, and I hope you had a wonderful weekend. So, today I would like to talk about summer training and things you can do to adjust for the heat, the long days, and all that that entails. We just went through the summer solstice, so the longest day of the year. And if you didn't know, it gets hot and humid in the summer. And as a extreme athlete, which you could argue that triathlon is getting pretty extreme, especially the longer distances, you really need to be aware of how your body is managing the heat and humidity. So, one of the first things that you should stay on top of is your daily hydration. This is not just your hydrating during the workouts and post workout, but throughout the day. And this is true year round, but especially in the summer, especially if you're doing the majority of your training outside or you happen to work outside, it's very, very easy to get chronically dehydrated. And that's going to have a bunch of health effects as well as performance effects. So it makes all your systems work harder if you're dehydrated. And as far as athletic performance goes, just 2 or 3% of body weight loss in fluids is going to result in a 5 to 10% loss in your performance. And part of that is a increasing risk of injury the more dehydrated you become because muscle function doesn't work, right? Your muscles don't have the fluids they need to operate, and then things start to break down. So your daily hydration. Make sure that that is a priority, maybe a top priority throughout the summer. If you hear some squeaking, it's because I'm ignoring my dog and she needs attention apparently. The next thing to be considerate of is your run timing. So, for those of you that are training for summertime events in hot conditions, if you're in the northern hemisphere, you do need to adapt to the heat. And in order to do that, you are going to have to intentionally do some training in the heat of the day. If you're doing a half Ironman or an Ironman, you're going to be running at 11 a.m. or 2 p.m. or 4 p.m. And that's when things are brightest and hottest. So the way we do this is gradually over a period of a few weeks, a handful of weeks, where let's say normally you're running at 6 a.m. Maybe instead once a week you'll go out and run 30 or 40 minutes at lunchtime. Don't worry about your pace, just put the time in. And then after a few sessions, you're going to start to get used to it. You'll be more adapted to it. It may not be super comfortable. It may never be super comfortable. But if your race is going to be in the heat of the day, you can't do all your training indoors or in the cool of the morning. So you do need to do some training outside during the day. The same goes for the bike. It's if you're doing a long ride, let's say you're doing a 4 or 5 hour long ride, it's okay to start at 6:30. So the first 2 or 3 hours are not boiling hot, but then you're going to deal with the heat on those last couple hours. And long term, provided you have a summertime racing goal, that is going to help you. So for those of you who prefer to do all your riding indoors, you may need to crank up the heat, move the trainer to the garage, things like that, so you can actually expose yourself to the environment. Now, that being said, for those of you that are heat intolerant or older, you are going to have to do some adapting as well, but you may just want to downplay your summertime racing. In my case, I go to just sprint triathlons in the heat of the summer at this point in my life and do the majority of your training when it's cooler. For example, you run at 6 or 6:30, maybe it's 75, 80 degrees out, but it's still going to be humid in a lot of parts of the country unless you live out on, in the West. So you're going to be dealing with stuff, right? So you are going to still deal with the heat adaptation part of this. Another strong consideration I want you guys to think about is that, again, if you struggle in the heat, you're heat intolerant, you can swim more and run less. Running is the one that really you get impacted the most on. Of course, cycling as well, but for runners in the heat, it can be a struggle. Everything is tough, your times are slower, you're struggling to breathe, all of that kind of stuff. So it wouldn't be unusual to cut your run volume down by 10, 15, 20% compared to your normal time winter volume and swim a little more, especially if you're a triathlete. The swimming will take up some aerobic volume, and you're in the pool. While the pool may be warm, it's not going to be as warm as a 90-degree day. For cycling, you know, again, if you're training for a race, you need to ride outdoors and get used to some of that. But you can start early. So for a lot of us, it gets light at 5:30 or 6 in the morning. Put your bike lights on, be safe. But you can get out there and get a 3-hour ride before 9 a.m. or 9:30 a.m. and you can avoid the majority of the heat throughout the day. Now, all that being said, during these sessions, you really need to plan your routes so that you can stop and rehydrate, whether that includes stores along the way or a circle throughout your neighborhood where every couple of miles you can reload with a 20-ounce bottle. Because I don't know about you guys, but myself and a number of my friends, if we run for an hour in the heat, we're losing 5 or 6 pounds of fluid. It's not all fat. I wish I could tell you it is, but it's not. And after 2 hours, you're going to be gassed, and you're going to be, now for myself, that's getting into the 10 pounds, 7.5% of body fluid. So everything's going to be shutting down if I was to not rehydrate. So, make sure you're using some kind of electrolyte drink and really stay on top of it. Don't take chances. Don't go on a long route where you don't know where you can refuel or rehydrate, because that's actually dangerous. So you need to plan things ahead. That's all I had to say. Be careful out there. Make sure you use sunscreen. That's another subject in and of itself. Hope you're having a great summer. We'll see you next time.